Hi, everyone. We're back to the BudCast. I'm Corey,
And I'm Millie.
and we are GPS facilitators, and we are going to talk about Unit 2 today, which is called Managing Individuals. So the big idea in Unit 2 is all about motivation and the motivation of individuals. So you may remember at the beginning of Unit 2, we did two long lists, one of what motivates you and one regarding what demotivates you. And that was a great insight to see what demotivated other people. Don't you think, Mel?
Yeah, I love that activity because it really makes you think about your own motivations and the kinds of things that I think we asked the question, what brings you energy at work too?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so you get to hear from everyone else in the room that, there's answers that they give that are not what you would share. And that's a good thing to keep in mind when you're working with your team and the folks that you manage, that what works for you and what drives you is not necessarily what drives everyone else. I think when you think about things like recognition, the kinds of recognition that people like, it varies. There's a lot of people that are more introverted and they don't want a big pomp and circumstance made out of them. And they'd rather just have that one-on-one acknowledgement from their manager. So things like that, I think, are really good to reflect on for yourself, but also surveying the folks that you manage and understanding their unique preferences for what you can use to motivate them throughout the year. So this is a good one.
Yeah, there were a lot of tools and insights into how to figure that out. One of them was that video we saw that talked about mastery, autonomy, and purpose. And that really provides a great framework to understand what motivates people. We always think it's just money, but it's not just money. And there's a lot of other things that you as a manager can provide to help motivate people.
Yeah, I think it was a very thought-provoking video to watch, and those links are still available in our GPS Connect. People can access that if you want to refresh your memory about it. But thinking about how fulfilling it can be when you master a new skill or when you have autonomy over a project, it's providing its own level of satisfaction, and that's something that you can carry with you throughout your career, as opposed to just maybe a bonus or a gift card. That's not always going to be the driving force that pushes people to reach past just the bare minimum expectation.
Right. And in GPS, that's called discretionary effort. And a lot of times people thought it meant that people stay long hours and don't have work-life balance and are just working, working, working. And I realize it doesn't mean that. It means excelling at what they are doing as opposed to just doing the bare minimum.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember it being sort of a controversial topic when we discussed it. Some people interpreted it as just like bleeding people dry of every ounce of effort they could give. But it's not about getting more than we're paying for out of your team. It's really, our mission and our participants deserve the very best from Best Buddies. And it's what sets us apart from a lot of other organizations. And I know the mission tends to be a big motivator for a lot of our staff. And I think as a manager, when you can make a lot of your communication, a lot of your goal setting conversations geared around the mission and the impact that we can make in people's lives, that helps us reach further beyond what maybe we initially thought we were capable of. And I think that it really energizes people. And sometimes we need that boost of energy when another event season comes around, or it's another CP selection time, or we have high expectations for making jobs placements, thinking about who's really going to be impacted if we give our all to this project, and what are the possibilities that can exist.
Before we talk more about the tools that are in here, I just also want to bring up self-fulfilling prophecy. And you and I had a great conversation about, I was saying how I had a positive bias towards my direct report. And sometimes that means that I kind of just assume she's going to know what I'm thinking and know what to do. And I sometimes skip over clear communication because I assume she's in my head.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that came out of that conversation was the sometimes discomfort we may feel as managers when we're managing someone who we might have a good rapport, more of like a friendship with. And it can be uncomfortable to have very structured conversation with them. You might not want to appear like you're telling them what to do, even though as a manager, that's kind of what we're here for. So I think one of the ways that I've navigated that is sort of leaning on the structure of an agenda for a meeting or those regular check-ins where and your team member that you're managing can expect that we're going to talk about certain topics, and it doesn't take away from our existing rapport or relationship. This is the nature of what we need to do to make sure that we're all reaching our goals and that they're successful, and by association, you are successful as a manager. So I think things like those stay in touch interview questions that you might remember from the unit, that gives you some really great ideas about how to start those conversations and make sure, you're checking all the boxes of that person's experience and getting ahead of any issues that may arise, or making sure they're feeling supported and fulfilled. And, not using them all at once and bombarding them with those conversations, but finding ways to incorporate them, or even the managing by walking around tool. And that's where you're going to be joining them for maybe a meeting that they're having, or kind of taking a chance to have coffee with them and really just have a more informal conversation, but getting a sense of where they're thriving, where they might need improvement or additional support, in a way that doesn't feel as pressurized as an intense meeting. So have you used those, Corey?
I have. I actually asked, well, many of you know Nubia reports to me. And so I often ask her what would tempt her to leave this week. I love that conversation. I love that question. And I think she's started telling me, not, and also today we were talking about something, and, for Nubia to say, what would you like to learn, is kind of like she just is breathing. She's learning all the time. And I now realize that she wants to learn on her own time, not on our time. And part of her job is learning new tools and skills. And so I am going to now try and put that learning time in her calendar so that she's not feeling like because she was up all night building a web page last night. It was gorgeous. But I'm like, why'd you do that on your time? She's like, oh, well, I wouldn't want to, be on Best Buddies time to learn. And so that was really interesting to me. And so I feel like that's a great manager thing I could do, which is really look at how she's spending her time and what motivates her, and bring that into our time, our good time.
And I think it speaks to your interest in investing and pouring into her and making sure we're prioritizing things like building your skills and mastering a new skill. I think that can be really meaningful as a sign of validation for a team member too. One of the things that this unit gets into too is kind of looking at the type of leadership that's needed for folks as it relates to their independence level. And something you said triggered a thought in my head about working with someone who's super independent and capable. That doesn't mean they don't need you to still be their manager. And thinking about what they actually need from you. And maybe it's not the same thing that your new hire might need, but it's, depending on the person, they still might need that validation. They still might want autonomy over projects. You can't sort of take for granted that they don't have needs from you just because they're super hyper independent. And, I can think of a dozen people that work here who have been here a long time. They seem to meet their own needs in a lot of ways, but they still deserve to have a manager that is their best boss, So it reminded me of when, someone who maybe just had a death in their family, or they just had a baby, and you say to them as a friend, let me know if there's anything I can do, or if there's anything you need, and they're not coming up with why would they have to do the emotional labor of giving me an idea of how to help them? Sometimes you have to force a casserole on somebody and just decide, based on what you've observed, what could be helpful for them. You determine what way that you're going to actually pour into them and contribute to them. So sometimes we have to do that for our team member too.
Yeah, that was a good example. I'm glad you brought that up, because it reminds me of the 10 communication tips. And one of them is don't equate your experience with their experience. And that one I really took to heart.
It's a really good video I've shared with friends and family. So definitely go back to that link and watch it again and share it with folks you think it would help.
And the link is also in the GPS PDF, which is in GPS Connect. You could find that on SharePoint. There's a folder with a lot of, with all of the units, as well as what I call aftermarket items, things that were created after the creation of the units, either by us or by one of you. So there's a lot of good stuff in there. And I'm glad you brought up the styles of leadership. Because I think, we had a question from Julie Miller about, just some tips on managing multiple people, and how hard it is because they're all at different places. And so I think when you're, trying to thread the needle with different staff members, remember that they're all at different places. And the only thing that you can adjust is yourself, right? You can't necessarily change them. You might not be able to change the situation, but you can change the way you're coaching them. And it might be helpful to look at where your different staff is in that structure, in those 4 quadrants, and see how you can nuance different communication with different staff members.
Yeah. And I think, as we've mentioned in the things we discussed in Unit 1, that's something that shouldn't be stagnant. You shouldn't just label somebody as needing a certain style. That's going to evolve as they're gathering more experience in the role they play here, or as they're growing in the organization. They'll need more delegating or more coaching, or when a task is new, you'll have to do a little bit more directing. So constantly taking stock of that throughout the year and using those conversations you have in the check-ins that you have with them to really assess what their needs are.
And for, the grads, that we have the 7 levels of delegation, which is down the line, but you can always pull that up because I thought that was really helpful. This unit also talks about, it really gets granular about the different needs of different independence levels and different coaching styles or leadership styles. So there's a lot to it. And before we go, I wanted to just remind you guys about the Applied Leadership Questionnaire, which is how you found your leadership style. And even more so, there's things in here which allow you to really tune your management, tune your awareness. Like, for instance, number 22, focus on opportunities, not problems.
We have to remember that we have a job to do, and managing is challenging, but it's really fulfilling when you can be a part of somebody's journey and be considered when they are asked who their best boss was. You can be among the people they think of. So that's a motivator for you, hopefully, to really do good by the people that you're managing and make sure they have a good experience working here.
Agreed. Well, I think we've talked about managing individuals. We hope we've refreshed, given you some ideas, some food for thought. We have a lot of this information on the GPS Connect page. So please go to it. If you have any thoughts, questions, feedback, how can they reach us, Millie?
They can email Corey and Millie with the subject line BudCast and let us know what topics you're interested in exploring, or challenges, or great examples of how you've utilized some of the GPS tools. This unit has some really great tools, so definitely make sure to try to incorporate those in your day-to-day operations.
Great. Okay, well, it was so nice spending some time with you, Millie. I will see you next time.
All right. Thanks for tuning in.